Ungovernables, the captain's crew, the LFA family, McGroin Nation. We are coming to you live from the deep red state of Tennessee on rumble.com/LFATV. Welcome to Ungoverned. Happy Thursday to you. And we are going to be with the great Chase Bowes this morning. Interview is recorded, but I am here live right now. Here's proof of life. Actually, before I give you proof of life, we got to make sure that this music stops. And then, of course, bouncing between scenes sometimes causes a problem. So we'll have that. But here you go. Let me show you. Live chat will be on the screen. Boom, there it is. Okay? There you go. I know I've been saying it every day since Monday. Color should look better today. Hopefully. We hope. Chase Bowes joins us for the midterm forecast. The color's not going to look good on my end on that because that was yesterday. But this should look better, right? Yes or no? Do you think? Yeah? Yeah?
It must be my computer because you look almost the same. So don't listen to me because it's probably my computer.
Cool. What are you guys saying over there on Rumble and live chat? Let me know what you think. I mean, it's probably a little washed out still. I still have a lot of work to do on that front. But I think it looks better than it looked on Monday. According to Brennan's computer, her computer says...
My computer screen must not
That computer
be good
screen is not a great screen.
No.
But should look different. So hopefully... the folks on 1210, when I was on 1210 this morning, said that it looked good for them. So I'm going to imagine that it's okay. We have... Plus, it doesn't matter because... it's... I don't even know what I was saying. I'm tired. So... it's not going to matter much because we have the interview for most of the show. Before we get to the interview, picture's fuzzy. All right. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, you do look a little fuzzy for me, too. I wasn't sure if that was my computer or not.
See, I don't look fuzzy on mine. So I don't know. Maybe it just looks different, and that's why we think it looks fuzzy. I don't know. This looks totally... Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to sit here and worry about this. All right, we have Chase Bowes coming up, midterm forecast. It's going to be a big forecast. Big changes made after the Michigan and Wisconsin primaries. And we will have those changes. Nice conversation with Chase Bowes, up and coming star in our movement, I believe. Somebody who you can rely on to give you numbers without any bias. So we will have that. And that is going to be the bulk of today's episode. Tomorrow will be our last show on LFA TV before we start Sean Farish Live on Monday, August 17th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, rumble.com/Sean. So tomorrow we'll have an extended phone call time. Tomorrow we'll have a little bit of a different show. We'll still touch on some of the breaking news because this is we do news. But we'll also do a little, some of our favorite moments, and we'll take a bunch of calls and everything. So tomorrow will be the last show, and we will be live for that. So you will have that tomorrow as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I want to get to a word from our friends at OFP Farms. It's OFPFarms.com, OFPFarms.com. OFP Farms is a family-owned and American company creating farm-crafted skincare with quality ingredients that your skin actually understands. From rich goat milk lotions and grass-fed tallow and magnesium creams to soothing body soap and delicious lip balms, every product is thoughtfully made in small batches with care. They are simple, hardworking formulas to help... These are simple, hardworking formulas created to help nourish dry skin, support tired muscles, and bring a little more comfort to your everyday routine. When you shop OFP Farms, you are supporting a real family, a true patriotic small American business, and products made with purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, go to OFPFarms.com. Use the code Sean, SHAWN, to get 15% off of your entire purchase for the month of August. OFPFarms.com, promo code Sean, OFPFarms.com, promo code SHAWN. You see it right there. OFPFarms.com, promo code SHAWN for 15% off of your entire purchase for the month of August. That is, once again, Oscar Foxtrot, PapaFarms.com, promo code Sean, SHAWN. Check them out. They are great. We love OFP Farms, and we appreciate them being a part of the show since day one. So they are fantastic. I'm right now using the lemon mojito. There it is. Boom. Their Goat Kisses lip balm is the best lip balm in the game. All right, without further ado, let us get to Chase Bowes with his updated 2026 midterm forecast, House forecast, Senate forecast. We talk about the what the Michigan primaries meant, what the Wisconsin primaries meant, how that's going to impact the midterms, which is just 2.5 months out, and what the Republican Party needs to do better, what Republican voters need to do better ahead of these midterms, or else we're going to get really bad results, and we can't blame anyone but ourselves if turnout is low. That's our fault. So without further ado, let us get to Chase Bowes, the great Chase Bowes. You can follow him on X at Pol Predictions, P-O-L, and then Predictions at Pol Predictions. You see it scrolling by in your ticker. Chase Bowes on X. You can follow him there. You can follow him on Instagram, too, at political.predictions. He is the man. He is a rising star in this game, and he is on top of it. So I hope you enjoy. We're going to have the interview split up into 2 parts. We'll be back about 20 or so minutes. We'll do a word from our friends at Silent. Come back after that, another 20 minutes or so of Chase, and then Cove Pure, and we'll wrap for the day. Just so you have a rundown on the way things are going to go this morning. Here you go, the great Chase Bowes. All right, now joining the show, our good friend Chase Bowes, the best data analyst in the game. Will be the last time that he joins me here on LFA TV, but we'll be doing a lot together in the days coming. And with this midterm cycle on the horizon, Chase Bowes, one of the best data guys in the game. We were looking at the Wisconsin race. We've been talking about the Michigan race. We've been talking about the Democrat civil war. There's a massive civil war happening on the Democrat side, and so we bring him in. There he is, our good friend Chase Bowes. Chase, what's going on? A lot happening since the last time you've been with us.
Yes, sir. Midterm season is in full swing, so I know you and I have both been watching it like crazy. So thank you for having me back on.
Yeah, I mean, we were watching the Wisconsin race, and what was it, midnight, closing in on 1 a.m. We're sending numbers back and forth. I'm like, I think this is over. I don't know what's left. And, this 20 minutes, and we'll get the Milwaukee drop. And then, of course, that doesn't come until 3 a.m. or 2 a.m, whenever the heck that was. But we were spot on with the conversation that we had. I made a joke on yesterday's show, and I said, if our signal chats ever get leaked, it's just going to be 2 people sending numbers back and forth. There's nothing else. But I was saying, we were watching it, and much tighter than we thought. But before we get into Wisconsin, I want to go a week before then. You had Haley Stevens, America's favorite.
That's the Michigan way.
America's favorite chipmunk, of course, and Abdul El-Sayed. And there were a lot of, the prediction markets. There were a lot of polling out there that had Abdul El-Sayed. It was supposed to win by double digits, and he didn't. So what could you say about that, about the polling miss in Michigan, but the DSA adjacent candidate still pulling it off in Michigan? What say you about that?
Yeah, man, I think, the polling has been, and you and I both feel the same about polling. We both think it's, at this point, bull crap. And I think it's definitely missed the mark. And that's why when I do my forecast, I don't go off polling. I go off, before I have a candidate, I go off the generic Democrat, generic Republican if there's no clear winner. And but no, for this one, I think that it was an interesting race, definitely. And I know it was a nail biter the entire time. And we thought that one was close before we, were watching Wisconsin last night. And so I know El-Sayed, we saw him get, I think the aggregate was about plus 13%. And he ended up winning by about 1%. So it was definitely much, much closer. But I think what that shows right now is that many Democrats aren't ready to accept the DSA wing of the party. And so I think that for now, it's going to be very, very close within some of these races. And again, we'll talk about that in Wisconsin as well. But no, the polling missed the mark, and it's crazy, and that it was such a difference. But then again, I say it's polling in 2026. What can you do? It's never accurate, I swear.
Well, you look at the polling miss with Abdul El-Sayed, and you look at the way that race, kind of developed as the results came in, and Haley Stevens kept it much closer than anybody thought she would. And now there's some kind of defectors out there, namely Jill Biden's former press secretary, Michael LaRosa. He came out and he said that he's endorsing Mike Rogers in Michigan. Now, before the Michigan Senate primary, especially on the Democrat side, there were some polls, Hassan Piker doesn't like to admit this, but there were some polls that showed that Abdul al-Sayed was the lesser of the two candidates in the general election. He didn't have as good head-to-head polling numbers against Mike Rogers that Haley Stevens had. And I think you might have agreed with that. I think we were talking about that, weeks before this, saying Abdul al-Sayed appears to be the more beatable candidate. Now he is the candidate. There are a bunch of people who have gone on record, whether they're Democrat voters or Democrat politicians or Democrat operatives, former press secretaries, etc., that said, hey, we're gonna put our weight behind Mike Rogers because we just can't get behind the agenda and the policies, the platform that Abdul al-Sayed stands for. Do you still believe he's the more beatable candidate if it was him or Haley Stevens? And what do you think about Mike Rogers' chances in Michigan going forward?
Absolutely. So I definitely think he's more beatable. However, that means as Republicans, we can't just say that race is an easy win. It's not. It's a hard race. We have to put money into it. We have to put effort, time.
Yeah, it's still a swing state.
Efforts, please, into it. Still a swing state. Mike Rogers did incredibly well against Alyssa Slotkin in 2024. Granted, she was a more moderate candidate, or ran as more moderate. She was more of the establishment type. And so I think that Rogers can pull it out this time around if we're smart about it. We just have to be strategic, and it has to be, we have to get our votes out. We're in a Democrat-leaning midterm, whether we like it or not. And that's just the way history works. So we have to get Rogers to the finish line. El-Sayed is definitely beatable, and I do think some of the crossover or some people staying home for DSA candidates will end up with Rogers winning, though narrowly.
So you're forecasting at this point, obviously things can change, but you're forecasting at this point Mike Rogers winning that Michigan Senate race against Abdul al-Sayed. Is there? I have to ask this because what we just saw in Wisconsin a couple nights ago. Is there a little bit of toxicity when we talk about Hassan Piker? Is his proximity to a guy like Abdul al-Sayed? Hassan Piker coming out saying America deserved 9/11, and Kristen Welker and so many others have asked Abdul al-Sayed, hey, are you going to denounce that comment? And he comes up with this rehearsed, manufactured, talking point of, well, I'm not really concerned with who I'm campaigning with. I'm concerned with who I'm campaigning to, which he said about 4 times over the course of a 1-minute clip with Kristen Welker. When all he has to do is say, look, Hassan Piker has a large audience. There's a lot of people that we want to introduce to politics, but I don't believe that we deserve 9/11. Do you believe it's maybe the proximity to a guy like Piker that is hurting candidates like Abdul al-Sayed? He won the race, but much closer margins, by much closer margins than polling would have suggested and prediction markets would have suggested. And Hassan Piker was in favor of Francesca Hong, and she lost, right? So is there a little bit of toxicity? Is there a little bit of like, hey, if you're that close to Hassan Piker, it might hurt your chances on the Democrat side of things?
I think so. And I think just any of these anti-American people, I think, are going to hurt, generally most Democrat voters still. Unfortunately, we've seen some polling where Democrats are less proud to be American than they were 20 years ago, while Republicans have maintained, if not improved, the numbers. But I still think there's enough Democrats that are like, this isn't right. You can't just say that innocent people deserve to die and somehow think you can get elected, So I think, Hassan Piker, anybody like that with those extremist beliefs, honestly, terrorist beliefs, are going to poison the Democrat Party. And it's already happening. We're seeing it. And I think it's going to hurt El-Sayed a little bit, for sure. It definitely hurt Francesca Hong, I'd say. And I think that down the road, we're going to just see the long-term effects of it.
So now we look at Wisconsin, and these are 2 states right next to each other, Michigan, Wisconsin, and you see another razor-thin race between a DSA candidate. A lot of people say, oh, Abdul al-Sayed wasn't the DSA candidate. He wasn't, endorsed, technically wasn't endorsed by the DSA. I get it. They want to play these word games, and that's fine. They can go ahead and do that. His platform is DSA adjacent. He stands for the same crap that they stand for. As far as I'm concerned, the guy is DSA. But Francesca Hong was like, without question, let's cancel Thanksgiving and all this other crap. another razor-thin race in a swing state between a DSA candidate or DSA-adjacent candidate and the establishment Democrats. So my question here is, does this, you could look at New York, Mamdani winning, it's New York City. It's a deep blue hellhole. You could look at Seattle, it's Seattle. Katie Wilson, it's a deep blue hellhole. You look at some places in New Jersey or look at some place, Denver, Colorado with this Milat Kiros. These are blue epicenters. But these statewide races, like in Michigan and Wisconsin, are highlighting what I would say is absolutely a very evident divide between the establishment and the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, in Wisconsin, it did not go the way of the DSA. In Michigan, it did. Why do you think things went differently in Wisconsin? And how does this impact this divide that we're seeing going forward, especially 2.5 months out of the midterm? I feel like this could be something that can be exploited by folks who want to see Republicans win in these midterms.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'm a little surprised that they're already putting these DSA candidates in such crucial swing states and running them to such a high degree. But I think to answer your question, looking at Wisconsin compared to Michigan, I think maybe some voters, I will say David Crowley got the endorsement and the campaign work from the current incumbent, Tony Evers, as well as, it's honestly been an interesting campaign. I think there's 8 total people in the Democrat primary. Crowley at one point dropped out, came back in after somebody else dropped out. It's been a whole mess. Hong has raised national attention for this crap that she's been saying. It's been a ridiculous campaign to watch. And, everybody was like, oh, Hong's going to win. And she ended up being 20% up in the polls against anybody else, while the undecideds were still probably about 15%. And, kind of Crowley, I think, sat around 25% average. And so I think that it's an interesting concept because the gap was much bigger than the polling gap in Michigan, and yet Hong still lost. But I think that maybe people in Wisconsin just saw the writing on the wall. They saw what happened in Michigan. They're like, now we're going to probably lose a Senate seat. Let's not lose our governor's seat here. And, governor's races are much more different than federal races as well. It more applies to the state than to the federal government. So there's probably some of that aspect in there as well, as like, do we want a socialist running our state versus do we want a socialist having one of, 100 seats in the Senate?
Yeah, it's a valid point. When you talk about a governor's seat, people look at the governor, it's the top, executive seat of the state. And a lot of that is usually talked about in kind of national ways. Maybe that's because a lot of governors have made national noise over the last couple of years, namely like a Ron DeSantis, right? A Kathy Hochul, a Mikey Sherrill, some folks like that. Glenn Youngkin, right? He was thrust into national politics with his education stance and everything. But the governor's seat is a state seat, right? It's part of the state legislative, well, not legislative, state governments. And you look at Francesca Hong, you look at David Crowley, and David Crowley was like in the race, then he wasn't in the race, then he was back in the race. Like a lot of weird stuff going on there. But David Crowley pulls it off. And is this the establishment telling the Democratic Socialists of America, hey, not so fast? This is still our party. Do you see this? Is this, would you say, evidence of a power struggle on the Democrat side?
Absolutely. I'd say so. I think the establishment Democrats, and we've been saying this for a little while now, I think that the establishment Democrats feel threatened. And I think many of them are scared to what's come of the party. And, maybe what these socialist candidates are thinking, they know that the majority of America isn't going to fall for this. We're not going to fall for socialism. And you just, it has to be, unfortunately, these people present, promises of free stuff, and everybody loves free stuff, but this stuff isn't free. It doesn't, it's, we talk about free healthcare or free housing or whatnot, and none of that's free. It all has to be paid for somehow. And so I don't think that these socialist candidates are going to prevail long term. They're not going to be electable in most areas. Like you said, New York, Denver, areas like that, Seattle, they're going to do fine because for some reason people there think that's okay. But in swing states, I don't think that they're going to be able to work like this, nor at the presidential level or in the Senate level.
So you look at these swing states. So let's look at it, because in Wisconsin, this is a governor's race and the socialist candidate lost. But in Michigan, Abdul al-Sayed is going to be the nominee. I mean, barring a Graham Plattner-like situation, which, it looked like he was going to be the nominee too, and then the Democrats decided to undermine their own democratic process, which is great. Nobody talks about that anymore. And nobody talks about the fact that there was no criminal charges filed involving the rape allegations, which is just, they were credible enough to get him out of the race, right? But not credible enough to pursue charges. I find that to be very interesting. Same with Eric Swalwell, by the way. I find that to be very interesting. They're looking at the data, I think, and making their choices based off of what their data says. But you look at Michigan, and you mentioned that America is not going to fall for socialism, but a significant portion of America has. And I get it's on one side of the party, and it's one faction of one side of the party. But I think there was some polling that came out a couple of weeks ago, like 2/3 or over 2/3 of the Democrat Party are okay with the idea of socialism, right? Because they think it's free stuff. But when you actually have a conversation with these people, even Abdul al-Sayed admitted this over the weekend, and they said, well, if you're going to use taxes to pay for healthcare, aren't we going to be paying more in taxes? And he was like, yeah, you might see an uptick in taxes. We may have to pay for healthcare in a different way. Well, then it's not free if you have to pay more for it, right? Or am I missing something? For me, the definition of free is I pay nothing and I get something. That's free. If I have to pay more in taxes to get something, it's not free because I'm paying more for the thing that I don't even want in the first place. So how are Americans actually falling for this? Are they not getting to that point in the discussion where we're saying, hey, look, it's not actually free. This is a scam because you're going to pay more for something they're telling you is free. And second, while we look at maybe the majority of Americans, or the 330 Americans in the country, however many of them are registered to vote old enough, how many of them are actually going to turn out in the midterms with this full slate of information that they're actually voting either for or against socialism or let's call them a moderate Democrat that would just be a rubber stamp for the DSA agenda anyway? How many Americans know this, and how do we help more Americans know this?
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like to me that 2/3 of Democrats need to go back to high school and retake economics and personal finance because, again, they have no understanding of the concept of what free really is, or that they just think they're entitled to everything. And I'd say we're in for a hard midterm here because on our end we struggle with messaging, and on the Democrats' end, like I said, yesterday on X, that whatever happens, they get behind their candidate and they'll back them. And no matter how much of a lunatic they are, they'll back their candidate, and that'll be that. But we sit here on the right and we kind of infight a little bit, and more than a little bit, and then we'll go against each other even up until election day, and it can't work that way. And when it comes out to messaging and such like that, we need to be the ones that go out there and say, hey, these guys are crazy, like absolutely insane, and these do not represent American values. And I think we're failing to do that, and I think that may hurt us in some places because we're not getting that message out, because the Democrats are just going to say, oh yeah, vote for this guy, he's great, he's going to do this, this, and this. He'll never do those things, but we'll say he will. And I know that's just generic politics, but let's with el-Sayed, he's not an Alyssa Slotkin. He's beatable. He's not running as a moderate. He's running as we know that he's honestly a lunatic with his policies, socialist policies. And I think we're in for a struggled midterm if we can't get that across to voters, especially for Republicans to come out and fight against this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And one of the biggest problems we have is apathy. And we'll touch on a little bit more on that in a second. But you look at the results in Michigan in the Senate race, and you look at the results in Wisconsin, the governor's race, and you see two razor-thin races and two very different results. And so I guess the last question I'll ask you about this Democrat Civil War is there's clearly a power struggle. We identified that. Ken Martin, who's the chairman of the DNC, is essentially useless. He has no idea what he's doing. They're not raising money. They'll be getting money from other sources, but the DNC itself is not raising money. How can a Democrat Civil War benefit Republicans going into the midterms? How can that be exploited? If you're looking at this and you're giving advice, how can that be exploited? And finally, do you see a scenario where, let's say in Michigan, and this would be great for us, but do you see it? Do you believe that this will play out in a meaningful way? In Michigan, where a bunch of disaffected, non-socialist, quote-unquote moderate, old-school Democrats get behind Rogers. We've seen some proof of that. More importantly, in a place like Wisconsin, where the DSA candidate lost, do you see the Democratic Socialists of America, the Hassan Pikers of the world, and his audience staying home and not voting, not just in the governor's race, but down ballot as well in places like Wisconsin?
I mean, both are very realistic universes, and I think looking at them, like you said, in Michigan, either they're going to back Rogers or some may vote third party, and the same thing in Wisconsin. The DSA people might vote third party or write in, or like you said, stay home. I think it's entirely possible, but I would argue that I don't think we can rely on that going into the midterms. We should be saying, like, we should imagine that 100% of the Democratic base is going to turn out for their candidate, and that's how we should run the races in those seats to make sure we can win them. Though I think those are very realistic, but like I said, those are things that we should use to, justify, say, lack of messaging, turnout, etc. I think we still need to push those states 120%, assuming that, every Democrat's going to turn out for candidate regardless.
All right, that was part one of our interview with Chase Bowes. It's the last time he'll be joining me here on LFA TV, but he's got a lot of good things to say. And hey, sometimes it's information that you don't necessarily want to hear. Not the best news sometimes, but at least it is free of bias, and that's the best thing we could ask for. We want accurate information, and Chase gives you accurate information. So we're going to take a really quick break, get to a word from our friends over at Silent, and more from Chase Bowes on his forecast. slnt.com/Sean, slnt.com/SHAWN. Let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, your phone is a tracking device. Between government agencies, big tech, corporate data brokers, even those pesky cyber criminals, they're all fighting for a piece of your digital footprint, and they don't ask. They just go on and take it. That is why Silent exists. Silent makes Faraday gear that blocks all wireless signals, including cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, and near-field communications. No signal means no tracking, no remote access, and no breadcrumbs. It is the same technology that's trusted by special operations teams around the world, used to block signals, avoid surveillance, and secure communications wherever the mission leads. And right now, it is available to you, so you can protect your family, you can protect your freedom, and you can secure your digital footprint. All you got to do is drop your phone in a Silent Faraday sleeve, and it is off the grid, completely silent and invisible to the outside world. From their backpacks to their sleeves to their crossbody, Silent's patented technology gives you total control of your privacy. Just visit slnt.com/Sean. Get 15% off and free shipping on qualifying orders. That is slnt.com/Sean. Protect your rights, secure your data, and stay one step ahead. Silent.com. Silence the chaos. Go silent today. slnt.com/Sean. slnt.com/SHAWN. Again, pay close attention to the things that Chase Bowes says. He's not saying them sometimes because he knows it's something you want to hear. He is saying it because the data has led him to believe that that is the truth. And that is what Chase is after. Accurate information. Accuracy matters. So back to our conversation with the great Chase Bowes at POL, Paul Predictions, on X. So we talked about the Senate races and the House races last time you were on, and you've made some predictions ever since. You've been on X, killing it over there. It's been nice to see your analysis starting to come into high demand. Senate forecast, where you're at right now, since we just dealt with Michigan. I think you just mentioned that you think Mike Rogers will win that seat, and that would be a flip. It's my understanding that Democrats don't really have room to allow flips on the other way to happen. If they want to take back the Senate, they're going to have to hold Michigan. They're going to have to flip Texas. They're going to have to flip Maine. They're going to have to flip North Carolina. And then they're going to have to flip one of Ohio or Iowa in order to actually get that 51st seat in the Senate. What does your current Senate forecast look like right now, seeing as how Graham Plattner's out? There's some interesting data coming out about Texas, but that sort of happens every cycle. And Abdul El-Sayed being the nominee in Michigan, where are you with your current Senate forecast for the 2026 midterms?
So right now I have Republicans at 53 seats and Democrats at 47, which is the same margin we currently have now. And we have two flips, being Michigan for Republicans, North Carolina for Democrats. Okay. But there's a couple of races that are potentially going to go either way. I know we we like how well Susan Collins does in Maine, and polling typically goes against her. You mentioned in Texas, Tallarico's currently up. I don't think there's going to be realistic things, coming in November. I think that Collins will win, though it may be more narrow. I think Tallarico will do all right. But I'm also looking at Alaska, Ohio, and Iowa, and we just have to make sure we're smart there and we hold on. Alaska has such a weird electoral system where their top 4 candidates qualify regardless of party, and then it's all the ranked choice voting and such. So I think we just need to be on alert there in Alaska as well. And but I do think Michigan, again, I think Michigan is doable. But I will say I think North Carolina and Georgia are probably down for the count for Republicans. But I think we're really going to be on defense here and in many states, but offense in Michigan.
So where it stands right now, you're saying one flip for Democrats, which is North Carolina, one flip for Republicans, which is Michigan. Those flips essentially cancel each other out, and you're dealing with the status quo in terms of the margin in the Senate after the 2026 midterms. And that, if I'm Republicans and I'm looking at that, that's a win, right? I'm taking that, and I am very, very happy that I'm not giving up seats if that's the way it plays out. I could see Maine. I could definitely see Maine flipping before I see Texas. But, the polling history, the way those races have normally gone in Maine, you're right to point that out. Same with Texas. We hear about Texas going blue, and we've heard about this for years and years and years and years and years. And while Beto got close, I don't know. I don't see it with Tallarico. I just don't know how he resonates with Texans. But then again, if Republicans aren't energized and ready to go out and vote, he doesn't have to resonate with that many. He just has to resonate with one more, Democrat than Republican voter, than Paxton voter. So we'll see. Let's move on to the House. The House of Representatives, that's the one that everyone, everybody talks about. It's every 2 years. Every seat is up. We've had redistricting. You've had the Voting Rights Act stuff come through. Redistricting in several states. They tried in Virginia. That got shut down. Generic polling is kind of all over the map right now. Where are you in the House forecast? And I have a feeling that there's not too many people are going to like what you have to say, but I don't care. I want to know what you are interpreting the data, what the data is telling you, and what we can learn from that going into these midterms. So where does your House forecast currently sit?
Well, right now it's probably a little even worse than I posted on X that first time, which got quite a bit of attention. People were not happy with that for sure. But generic ballot polling has gone more in the way of Democrats. And I will say, though I don't distrust polling, again, generic ballot polling has been more on point. So it's still a decent indicator for just the direction of the country at the current state. So I always do my forecasts as if the election were held today. So it's not, an outlook to November necessarily. It's what are we looking at right this second, right this moment? Who's going to win what? So right now I have Democrats at 227 to Republicans 208. And I will say, I think the loss of Hong's loss in Wisconsin yesterday might have cost us a seat. I think Van Orden would have probably performed better with Hong at the top of the ticket. Then now I believe Rebecca Cook is slightly favored. But on the alternate side of that, I will say I think our prospects could improve in Michigan's 7th and Michigan's 10th districts. So we could be able to hold on to those two as well. Of course, Michigan's 10th is open with John James running for governor, but Tom Barrett is running for re-election in the 7th district against another progressive candidate. So I think that's something we might have I think that's something that Democrats are, again, going back to why are we running these candidates in competitive races? I think that might cost them that seat.
And here's a question, right? You hear about the midterms. The midterms are a referendum on the president, right? They say this all the time. It's a referendum of the party in power. And look, Republicans have come up empty on some very important issues. Namely, everyone wants to point out the Save America Act, which is extremely frustrating. Voter ID is popular among the American people, over 80%. Some polls show that over 80% of Americans want ID to be implemented when it comes to people voting in our elections in all 50 states. So yeah, the Republican Party has certainly not delivered on some of the things that they could have. That being said, tight margins, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Obviously, you have the war in Iran, you have gas prices, you have inflation, which has cooled since the Biden years, but it's still there. And affordability, things are expensive, right? And that is maybe not the fault of the party in power, but it's something that is laying at the feet of the party in power. But is it possible, and you mentioned before that a majority of Americans aren't falling for the socialist garbage. Is it possible these midterms are not just a referendum on the party in power in Washington, D.C. and the president, but also a referendum on socialism? Are Americans, normies, moderates, independents associating the Democrat Party with socialism and communism, or are they still saying these are two separate animals? If it is a referendum on socialism, then what do you see? Do you see numbers kind of moving back towards the right a little bit? Maybe Republicans don't necessarily win the House, but they win a few more seats. Is that something you don't think is going to matter? Where are you on that aspect? Referendum on the president, referendum on socialism on the other side.
Well, I think it's going to be primarily referendum on the president still. People are honestly unimpressed. Even Republicans were not happy with the way Republicans have targeted some issues. You said SAVE Act, affordability are both very, very important. And, I said on November 7th, 2024, I said if Republicans want to keep ahead in these midterms, they have to hit affordability hard. And they have not hit affordability hard. It might have gotten better in some cases, but I paid a couple of weeks ago, I think like $3.70 at Costco for gas. And so, I think we're going to struggle there a little bit. But also on the socialism front, I think there will be some referendum on that as well, though maybe not. That might not be nationwide. That might just be in certain parts, of the country. So I think that's yet to be seen. It'll be interesting how that turns out. I definitely want to see some more information on that, but I don't think that independents are going to fall for this either. I think most are going to, unfortunately, some like I said, will vote third party, stay home. Some may cross over to Republicans, and I hope independents do.
How do we get those independents? What do you think is the best avenue to get those independents? We're 2.5 months out. Any legislation or magic wand to address affordability, that's not realistic. We can't just say, all right, gas is $2.10 again. That's not going to happen 2.5 months away. I was saying before Memorial Day, hey, we probably want to get this Iran situation kind of on the back nine before Memorial Day weekend, summer travel season. That's when it's going to really start hitting people hard in their pockets. And that didn't happen. And we had a 2-week ceasefire, and then we went back and more strikes. And it's just, that's dragged on longer than I think anybody, even the administration, would say they wanted to drag on. Although no plan survives contact with the enemy. I understand that. I'm not saying that there's a better alternative out here. I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. So it's you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Affordability, addressing it, that's going to be something that I think is going to be difficult over the next 2.5 months. What do you think, aside from that, is the best way to reach those independents and say, hey, you got to give us a little more time here. We're working on it. People are going to look at that and say, yeah, you said you've been working on it for years and nothing's happened. What's the best way to reach those people, strategy-wise? If you controlled, let's say, the RNC, how are you reaching independents to convince them to vote Republican, or not, at the very least, not to vote Democrat in the midterms?
Yeah, it's definitely a hard concept. Like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why I said, nearly 2 years ago that we need to focus on it ASAP, because it's not going to be ready in time. And here we are. And, the economy's not in the state that voters prefer, regardless of, how much improvement there's been since Biden. And there definitely has been. I mean, Biden was, very bad years for economy. But, there's the saying that voters vote with their wallet, and, what they see is not what they want to see. So I think that looking forward, I think strategy it's a hard concept, but it needs to be, here's where we were, here's where we are. These are the struggles we're currently having. And honestly, I'd say some transparency. This is where we want to be. But I think that it also means that Congress in some ways needs to move faster. I mean, they move so slow. The House moves a little faster than the Senate, but the Senate will take months on some legislation. And we see it firsthand with the SAVE Act that they're not moving. Some of them arguably don't care. I think that will benefit a little bit with people like McConnell and out of the Senate, and a couple others. Cornyn's gone, and I hope we'll benefit a bit from that, and maybe some people work a little bit harder. But we need some people to take some initiative in Congress, and there needs to be results, because you're not going to win independence by saying things. You need to win independence by doing things, and we don't do things in Congress. We just sit there and we talk and we complain and we argue. And so I think I don't think it's necessarily maybe just messaging. I think it's action, because, like they say, action speaks much louder than words, and we have no action.
Oh, I agree. And I know that you've been very passionate about some of the shortcomings of the Republican Party, whether it's federal, national, state, and local, that there's a messaging problem. There's an apathy problem. I don't understand why it's once every 4 years Republicans decide to play this Groundhog's Day game. It's like, all right, I see my shadow. I'm going to vote this year, but the next 3 years I'm going to lay on the beach and I don't care. I don't get why we do this. I know that part of it is the results issue, but why? Why the apathy? The Democrats don't have this problem. They're always ready to vote. That's not to say they never lose elections. They do. 2024, a glaring example, right? But why do we have this issue? I know you're very passionate about this, and you come from a different angle. It's data, right? So you're looking at numbers. You're looking at data. You're looking at what things people respond to and how they respond to it. Is it negative? Is it positive? Is it somewhere in the middle? We have a messaging issue. We have an apathy issue. We have a participation issue. We have an enthusiasm issue. What is behind all that, and what would you specifically do differently, or what would you recommend is done differently to address that problem specifically? Because that could go a long way to solving a lot of other problems that the Republican Party has.
Yeah, so first of all, it's a messaging issue like we talked about already, and second, it's an engagement issue within our own communities. We're not engaging our voters. We're not giving them the resources they need. We're not educating them. We're not getting out voter registration drives. We're not, let's take our own county, for example, right? We did this whole Keep Rutherford Red movement, and I think that, that could have been very good. And then we ended up losing 7 more commission seats of the 21 total. And now we're in a bad spot. We lost a school board seat, and here we are hurting because we're not getting our voters out. And I think what that did is, we bragged about having all this money, and we were like, yeah, we're good. We're gonna easily win this midterms, right? We're labeling people as socialists and all that, but that's not enough. We're not sending out mailers. We're not going to knock people's doors. We're not getting the young people involved. The young people aren't involved here. And so I think, just as an example for our local county, I think we're really struggling just to see, just to get the people out and enthusiastic, and we're not doing that right. So it's a door-to-door effort. It's a group effort, and it's something that local parties just aren't working hard enough on. And we saw that, I think, throughout Tennessee on Thursday. We saw how bad some counties were doing with that, specifically at the county level, and we lost a lot of commission seats. I'll say as well, looking especially in parts of the western part of the county where the 9th district was redrawn into, there was so much enthusiasm for Justin Pearson that had some that cost our school board seat, that cost a commission seat or two, and it would have cost another commission seat had he been opposed.
You're thinking because there would have been more Democrat participation in the primary, not just coming out for him. That's actually a very interesting point. He was running unopposed there. Look, I agree with you, especially locally here, that when I see folks out at events, well, you and so many others, it's the same 5 or 6 young faces. Why isn't that growing? And I can't lay blame on the young folks. They're trying. I see you trying. I see everyone, a lot of people trying. The folks that are on these college campuses, maybe they're working in Turning Point chapters and things like that. They're busting their tails. I just don't. Is it that the Republican Party just isn't attractive to young people? Or is it that they're not trying to reach the young people? Is it that, the GOP is still looked at as the party of the old boomer voter and all this? In 2024, Trump was able to grow among that 18 to 24 demographic, and it feels like we've kind of thrown back some of those gains and then some. And I know affordability is part of the reason. I know the whole, American dream feeling out of reach is part of the reason. But there's got to be another way. Is it just that politics isn't fun? Does the party not care? Is the money being spent on consultants and not on, outreach? Because that, to me, is one of my biggest problems. I hear all this about the RNC's got $130 million on hand, and the Trump super PAC is $400 million on hand. And I go, yeah, that's great. But how are you going to spend it? Because if you spend it on the same consulting firms that the same type of firms that tanked Ron DeSantis in 2024 because they knew better than everybody else, and these folks, I'm going to boost your social media, everything's going to look great online, but not in the real world. I'd rather get out there and pay activists. I'd rather get out there and fund events that bring people into the party, young people, enthusiastic people, get them involved, introduce them to politics, show them that it can be fun, that there are actually results, that there are tangible things that happen from participating. That's how I would spend the money. But I'm afraid that we're going to fall into the same trap that we fell into in 2022. All this money, and then we blow it on consulting firms that have not produced a result in decades, and meaningless, pieces of literature that you put in the mailbox. I'll tell you, my garage, I've got like 15 campaign pieces of campaign material in there. I didn't even look at them. I don't care what's in my mailbox. Come to my door. Let's have a conversation. What say you about the allocation of funds and how the Republican Party can use those funds to better grow the party, especially with young folks like yourself? You're 20. You're an aberration. How can they do it?
Absolutely. And as a self-owned consulting firm, I agree with you. It's the grassroots efforts, and that's
you're not. By the way, you're not the consulting firm I'm talking about. You're the new age, right? You're in there. You're actually on the streets. I see you running school board campaigns, and you're out there doing things. It's these ivory tower people who I know, and I've dealt with. When I was on Long Island, I dealt with a huge one. It was no. That issue, education, that's polling 11th. Not in this district, it ain't, buddy. I work here. You don't. You're from freaking Pennsylvania. Go home. Let us handle it. So you're the type of, consulting firm I'm talking about. Take a chance on someone new who doesn't have his head up his rear end or buried in the sand. I'm sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
No, you're good, man. No, absolutely. And that's one of my big selling points is I like to work with the grassroots. I like to engage them and get them going out and, especially among the young people. And I think really to answer your question earlier about, why the young people aren't motivated is that I think it's a multitude of things, but I think really the party doesn't care. They don't want to get us involved, and they don't. And they don't give us the resources. They don't give us the mentorship. Now, the reason I'm in the position I'm in where I'm doing this now is because of mentorship. It's, the friends I've met, yourself included, just the people that have gone along and supported me throughout this. And a lot of people don't get that lucky, and they don't know where to start. And there's so many people I talk to like, yeah, I really like politics, but I know nothing about it. I have no idea how to get involved. And so my main goal is let's get people involved, here in Tennessee, here in Rutherford County, nationwide. Let's get people just going out to the polls. Let's get, wave a sign on election day, go knock some doors. Let's help our candidates. But I think that to answer your question about the money, young people love money. We're college students. We need it. Let's make some internship programs.
That's a good
point.
Let's
do, $15-20 an hour to go door knock. Let's not spend these on the consultants. Let's spend these on the kids that can go out and work for you. Let's give them some work experience. Let's get them in the fields. Let's get them walking around. We're 18, 19, 20, 20 years old, right? We can go walk around neighborhoods all day in the summer heat. We don't mind doing that, but we want some money for it. So, I mean, a lot of our opportunities here are voluntary right now, but maybe if we direct some of that money towards engaging the youth, we can win a lot better, and we can win with them.
Hey, and that addresses affordability too. Go knock on doors for a few hours and you get a little bit of side cash, right? You're 21 and over, it's a little bit of beer money. There you go. You're younger, it's you use it on Uber Eats or whatever. Burritos apparently cost $20. I don't know. I don't eat Chipotle. But hey, you go knock on doors for a few hours, you could buy a few burritos after the fact. And that's a good point. I say pay activists, not influencers. I say pay activists, not, when I say consultants, I mean these gigantic consulting firms, right? And pay the people who can actually make a difference in your town. I think if there was a program to hire some of these young folks, hey, get involved in politics, make a little, you're not going to make life-changing money, but you're at least going to get something. If there are kids over the summer looking for a side hustle and they join a local campaign for county commission or something, right, in the county or in the state or whatever, Congress, in a primary, that's like there's a reward there. Even if they don't win, there's a reward there. They've made a little bit of money. They're like, hey, this is cool. There's actually a job for me in this field instead of kind of just, and there's nothing wrong with volunteering. I volunteer all the time. I don't ask for a dime when I jump on a campaign because I'd rather it go to somebody who more, who needs it. I have a job. I do this out of because I like it, right? But my point is, and your point also, pay the kids. That's how you get them involved. Kids like money too. Kids need money too. Students need money too. And if you want to get them involved in politics, it's not like, oh, you're going to bribe them. No. You're gonna say, here's your job, do it. Here's what we're gonna pay you an hour, and checks in the mail. And I think that's a great way to grow the party. Hopefully, there are some folks that are listening, or folks that are going to hear this another day, maybe not on this show, and say, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Anyway, Chase Bowes, BowesStrategyAnalytics.com. Let everyone know where they can find you on X, where you just recently blew up. A huge account there now, and putting out your forecast. People are looking for it. Even if it's not what they want, you get some pushback. That's all right. Let everyone know where they can find you, how they can support you.
Yeah, so it's political. My handle is at POL Predictions, Poll Predictions, and Bow Strategy and Analytics on Instagram and Facebook. Feel free to shoot me a message. I love talking with anybody. If you want to get involved, please talk to me. I want to get you involved. And yeah, no, I enjoy the conversations. And Sean, thank you again for having me on. And I look forward to the next part of the journey.
Heck yeah, we're gonna be growing together. I think you're one of the best in the business. You keep your, we know you're a conservative Republican, but you keep your bias out of your analysis, which is something that so many people just can't do. So I appreciate that, and I know the audience appreciates that, and I know your audience now, you've got a nice platform growing, appreciates that as well. Thank you for jumping on. We will definitely talk again soon. Chase Bowes, everybody. Thank you. That is the great Chase Bowes. When I say great, I don't say it lightly. Chase Bowes, chase.bowes at bowesstrategyanalytics.com. Bias-free analysis, as Bad Moon is saying in the chat. That is the best part about it. He does not let his bias seep into his data, which is rare these days, very rare. All right, let's take a quick break. Get to a word from our friends at Cove Pure. It's COVEPURE.com/Sean Cove Pure. Let's talk about fluoride. The government's been medicating your water with fluoride for over 80 years, not because you asked for it, not because you voted for it, but because they decided you needed it. Well, that's not a decision that I want anyone else making for me. That's why we filter every drop of water in our home with Cove Pure. Over 209 million Americans are on fluoridated water right now, and here's what the science actually shows. In September of 2024, a federal judge ruled that adding fluoride to water poses, and I'm quoting the court directly, an unreasonable risk to neurological health. Not a fringe study. It's a federal court ordering the EPA to act. In January of 2025, a study published by JAMA Pediatrics, one of the most respected medical journals in the world, confirmed a link between fluoride exposure and children's IQ scores. The higher the fluoride, the lower the IQ. Now, there are some states that have banned fluoride in the water. Utah and Florida have done so, but that process takes years to implement. Your kids, your family, they're drinking the water today. You need something that works right now, and that is exactly what Cove Pure is. Its Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants, including fluoride, PFAs, lead, pharmaceuticals, and heavy metals. Anything that is not water, filtered right on out. I love the fact that the setup is easy. I also love the fact that you can customize the temperature. It's great. Drinking my protein shakes now, cold, nice. It's awesome. Don't wait for the government to catch up. Go get yourself a Cove Pure today. Use my link, covepure.com/Sean. You'll get $250 off. That is covepure.com/SHAWN. covepure.com/Sean. covepure.com/SHAWN to get $250 off this amazing unit, the CP16. covepure.com/Sean. All right. I hope you enjoyed, again, that conversation with the great Chase Bowes. I always love talking to him. I always love picking his brain. He, you can see he's a young guy, but this means a lot to him. And his heart's in the right place. His head's in the right place. He can provide a service in the form of data and data analysis, and he can do it without bias. So it's not like, oh, this guy's got an agenda. Like, we know he's politically driven, but when it comes to giving his data, there's no agenda there. It's just, here's the agenda. Here's what the numbers are, and here's what the model suggests. As you heard, the House forecast not looking too good, but that's okay. You got a couple months now, right? A couple more pieces got to fall into place here. Senate forecast, honestly, to me, pretty optimistic. A flip on each side. Republicans hold 53 seats going in. They hold 53 seats going out. Does Maine flip? We don't know. Does Texas flip? Probably not. North Carolina probably does. But then again, over in Michigan, you're dealing with Mike Rogers and Abdul El-Sayed. So that could flip. All right. There's a lot that could change. And that's the point. There's a lot that can change, and a lot will change between now and the midterms. And so Chase Bowes will be talking to us. We'll be continuing to bring him on over on the new show as well once we get that established. So follow him on X. Follow him everywhere on Instagram as well at political.predictions. And I think also he has his personal account is there too. I just don't remember exactly what that is. And if you want to email him, or you're somebody who's looking for his services in the campaign world, chase.bowes@bowesstrategyanalytics.com. Tomorrow is our final show here on LFA TV. It is going to be a bittersweet moment, but we're going to have a good time tomorrow morning. And we'll open the phones up a little early for those of you who want to call in. Maybe think about this overnight until tomorrow. But what was your favorite moment the last 4 years on this show? I already know what my favorite all-time moment was. I've been talking to Brennan about this all day. I don't have the clip. At least I don't think I have the clip. But I may go scour and look for it. I know what my favorite moment was. Maybe you guys can guess it in the live chat. But tomorrow, maybe you can call in what your favorite moment was here on LFA TV. There you go. And we will go over some of that. We'll obviously lead with the most important news of the day. It is a news show. This is obviously a news channel. But we will also have a little trip down memory lane tomorrow. We'll do the phones as well. Jeremy Harrell up next here on rumble.com/LFA-TV. Rumble.com/LFA-TV. Speak of saying, is it Clover's Money Shot? That was not on LFA TV. That was on Locals. So that doesn't count. Jeremy Harrell coming up next. Rumble.com/LFA-TV. Hit that thumbs up button. Remember, you can subscribe to my new show, Sean Farish Live, anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You could also go to rumble.com/Sean. That will take you to the Bongino Report page, rumble.com/SHAWN. Hit subscribe. We go live 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday with the first episode of Sean Farish Live. Have a great rest of your Thursday. See you back here tomorrow morning. Same time, same place, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, rumble.com/LFA-TV. As President Trump says, we will never give up. We will never give in. And we will never, ever surrender. And if all else fails, we'll just become ungovernable. Thank you. God bless you. God bless this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. See you tomorrow morning for our last show on LFA TV. But until then, have a great Thursday. I'm on Newsmax later. Jeremy Harrell is up next. Thank you for your attention to this matter.